A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to ULTV Study Abroad 101. I'm Shafali Shrivastava, Marketing and Communication Manager at University Living. Again, back with another session of ours. And now with more and more news flowing across the world about opening up, removing restrictions, our Facebook and Telegram community has started receiving many questions about one very basic and important aspect, that is the entrance exam. Most of the students are boggled about which exam they should take. It's IELTS or TOEFL. So here we are. We're not going to, of course, pinhold you that which exam you should take. That depends on your university and country you're going to. But of course, we'll address all your concerns regarding these exams. Today, we are going to talk about TOEFL, that is test of English as a foreign language. TOEFL is accepted at many American, Canadian colleges and education institutes across the world. And we have Siddharth Iyer with us, Marketing Director at ETS India, to talk about the subject. Before we start on that, I'll tell you, ETS India, Educational Testing Service, exactly, that's the same ETS, is in charge of administrating the TOEFL test and responsible for creating the questions, administrating the test, and delivering each examinee their scoreboard. So there is no one better than Siddharth to address all your concerns, because whatever cheat and hacks Siddharth is going to share with us today, they'll help you in the long run. Hi, Siddharth, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me on the show, Shafali.
Thank you so much. About Siddharth, Siddharth has been extensively working, for education domain for last 14 years. He comes from Pearson Education and New Zealand Education, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. So that before we dive in, so what is your personal take as an entrance exam? Like one should go for IELTS or TOEFL?
Well, if you look at, the basic differences, every English language test certainly has their own advantages. But if we come back to the needs of high-stake English language tests and assessment, you need to understand that where is it coming from? In many countries, around the world, it is a mandatory requirement for students where English is not their first language to take up an English language test. And that is the need and requirement by which one takes up either a TOEFL or an IELTS test. Now, if you look at TOEFL in terms of how it does stand out, it is the most widely accepted English language test that there is, Shafali. It is trusted and accepted by more than 11,500 institutions around the world in over 160 countries. And we have 100% of universities in Canada, UK, Ireland, Germany, Australia, and New Zealand accepting the TOEFL IBT tests. In US, and TOEFL is almost synonymous to a test which is accepted across the US. We are not just the most widely accepted, but in fact, even the most preferred English language tests and assessment. If you look at an IELTS, they are accepted in about 10,000 plus institutions. A PT is accepted in about close to 5,000 odd. And we lead by far with 11,500 plus institutional acceptances. And not just that, the tests, any English language test measures all four skills in English, be it reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And with the TOEFL IBT test, the advantages is that, we check it exactly in the way that these English language skills are used inside a classroom in a university setting. The content is representative of what any student is going to face when they go to study abroad at an institution of their choice. So when we are strongly predicting the language proficiency skills that the student needs to progress, they can be very successful in an academic setting if they prepare with the TOEFL IBT test. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely does. Now it brings me to my second question. As you mentioned that there are multiple tests for English proficiency, like GRE, TOEFL, GMAT, IELTS, of course. So how all these four tests differentiate from each other? They all have similar questions, especially if I talk about TOEFL and IELTS. They have reading, listening, writing, and speaking. All the four sections are similar. How both of them separate each other from the other one?
Absolutely. If I were to look at, English language tests and proficiency, then they are the TOEFL and the IELTS. But if we take up other tests, which also have content around verbal and writing skills, which are being tested, which are the GRE and GMAT, they are used for a completely different purpose altogether. So for students, who are planning to go to graduate schools, including business or law school programs, or who are just looking to explore options, for them, it is a very important step towards their future. And it's a very smart move if they are able to showcase their best skills and abilities with a test like the GRE test. Now, what does this test aim to measure? So if you're looking at areas like verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, analytical writing skills, critical thinking, that you need to showcase yourself to stand out from the crowd, you have actually gained and acquired these skills over a long period of learning. And you're able to showcase this very effectively with tests such as the GRE and the GMAT. Now, the test focus of GMAT is predominantly limited only for business schools. And business schools certainly have stated that they have no bias towards either one test over the other, be it a GMAT or a GRE. And MBA admissions officers around the world that we speak to, certainly tell us that they are looking at students with a wide variety of academic backgrounds, not just business schools, but also students from science and humanities. And the use of the GRE scores, provides them a rich and a diverse pool of applicants that business schools are seeking. Now, few aspects, in tests such as, say the GRE, such as, the ability to go back and forth between questions, between sections, actually helps reducing the anxiety of kids who are taking these high stake tests. It cannot be done on a GMAT. A GMAT score report, includes test taker scores across the 5 years if they've taken the test multiple number of times and if they haven't canceled the test by themselves. Whereas GRE test takers can actually choose which GRE scores to report to schools. And these advantages certainly helps candidates. So on those tests, this is the basic difference where it is meant for. For English language tests, where say students even want to take it up for student visa filing applications or for immigration purposes, I cannot compare it, an English language test to say something, as rudimentary as a washing powder brand and say that, say, choose a Surf Excel, over a Ghadi detergent. It's not that comparative. But yet again, the differences are very stark, where every test will certainly have its own advantages. At ETS TOEFL, we've been pioneers in the industry. We've been in existence since 1947, probably the year that India gained independence. And we were the first to acknowledge also challenges which actually were imposed by COVID. And Shefali, at a time when students weren't able to go to test centers, where they weren't able to go outside, and wanted to choose the safety of their homes to test, we came up with something called the TOEFL IBT Home Edition. This was to meet the requirements of test takers, where they can take the same TOEFL IBT tests, the same content, the same on-screen experience, the same pricing, delivered from the safety and the comfort of their homes under very specific security conditions. So to match up to the needs of what are the times for the day, I think we've been very responsive on that front.
Yeah. Great. And you have mentioned twice TOEFL IBT. So I want to understand how many types of TOEFLs are there and what is the difference between them?
Absolutely. So what we've been able to do is that with the TOEFL IBT tests, we've come up with a huge portfolio of products and services where a student can take a test with how he chooses to test. The test can be taken at a test center. It can be taken at home via the TOEFL IBT Home Edition test. Or if students are comfortable with taking the test on pen and paper, they can choose a TOEFL IBT Paper Edition test as well. So the same test can be taken in 3 different ways. The TOEFL IBT test is the one test that we have. The other test, which is our newest offering, is called the TOEFL Essentials test. Now, this is again a high stake test and assessments, but it's just of a different style altogether. So for students who are interested in short paced tasks, where they want to test very quickly, they are used to an adaptive stage or format where English language questions which are put up in the essentials test actually match up to the ability of the candidate. They can get that with TOEFL Essentials. It actually surprisingly comes at half the cost and half the time for any other English language test or assessment. So while the TOEFL IBT test, is at about $190 odd, the TOEFL Essentials is at about $100 and comes in just about 90 minutes where you're done with your test. So.
Great. And the assessment results actually is the same, right? The college admission
Pretty,
process.
pretty
So
much. It remains exactly the same. Nothing really changes in there. But yet again, with TOEFL IBT, few aspects that certainly stand out, Shafali, are the reason why we actually make our tests, rigorous in terms of quality standards. It's say in the speaking section, of a TOEFL IBT test, where students at times, are jittery when they come in front of examiners, who come to assess their speaking skills. We actually kind of tend to do away with that, where we have no examiner who's actually in front of the candidate while assessing the speaking section of the test. A test taker certainly not be judged on how he or she looks like, or what he or she is wearing when they are, coming to a test. The only thing, which should be measured is English language skills and abilities. And that fair and unbiased scoring is certainly something that's provided by us. Yet again, if you look at some other section, in the TOEFL test, if you take a reading passage for that matter, you're actually shown from which section in the paragraph in the reading section is the question actually taken from. So students need not hunt for it and read through the entire paragraph again. They can just skim through it and go to the question directly. They also have a glossary, of difficult words which are being used in the test, for which they may or may not know their meaning to. And this certainly helps test takers, where they actually get to review each section of the test before moving on to the next session. So if in case, they are stuck with any particular difficult question, they can actually mark it up, and come back to that difficult question at a later stage instead of wasting their time, because these high stake tests are timed assessments. So they can mark up the question, complete the test, and go back to the question at the same time, when they were finding it difficult to attempt it for the first time, and try and reattempt it. For any English language tests that are taken out here, there are no negative markings at all. So yet again, if a student is not confident, they at least can take a best guess of what they think could the answer be, because they are not losing out on anything.
great. Something is better than nothing. And you
Exactly.
don't get negative marking. So of course it is better. You might get lucky. So now when you mentioned these sections, I wanted to understand listening, reading, writing and speaking. Which section requires the most attention and preparation time? Or if you can just share the preparation timeline with respect to the sections for a student's perspective.
Sure, absolutely. Yet again, we now have a much shorter test from how it was earlier. So the TOEFL IBT test currently is just 3 hours. And in order for a student, to do well in any English language test, you must understand the types of questions which are being asked in there. So say, the reading section of our test measures the test taker's ability to understand academic passages in English. Now, in order to do well here, I would advise candidates to read in English as much as possible and as often as they can, and read tests on a variety of topics, not just topics, that interest them, but also read, topics that do not interest you, so that, you get acquainted with the language which is being used there, and you try and make sense and understand that better. You should read, both academic and non-academic materials. Say, a business section of a newspaper is something that might not interest someone, but an entertainment section might interest, test takers. So, but you should read both, so that you're well acquainted with the kind of language being used in either one of them. For the next section, say the listening section of a test, it actually measures a candidate's ability to understand conversations in English and lectures which can actually happen inside classrooms when they go study abroad in universities. So key skills, which are actually used in your day-to-day experience, is what are being measured inside the test center as well. So how do you improve your listening skills? You use resources which are in your community to practice English language skills and abilities by listening into them, and prepare for academic situations. But you can also start from something, as rudimentary, as listening, to by listening into, say, movies on Netflix, US and UK based movies out there, to understand and listen to a variety of accents. And my advice, would be to do that without the subtitles. So all that they're doing is listening, and not reading the subtitles, which come in out there. That's something, where they can begin with. But yet again, with English language tests such as this, students need to develop a note-taking habit. The test of English, is not a test of memory. So they won't be asked to memorize anything and then put it out on a paper. They just need to listen and understand. So while they are listening in, few key points, they can actually take notes while they are taking the test. This will actually help them answer much better, more confidently when they come to the questions for the test. Say the speaking section, in the English language test is actually designed to evaluate a test taker's ability, to speak in an academic environment. How do you do that? How do you improve on that? Is by recording yourself speaking in English. You can do that on your phone. You have, your WhatsApp recording, send voice notes to yourself, read from an academic paragraph or an academic course book, and practice summarizing the content around aloud. Hear yourself speak and try and understand how you are doing. Judge yourself. Practice several times and then record your summary. But what students need to concentrate on is speaking clearly with good pronunciation and intonation. So for them to be able to do that, it only comes with practicing and hearing yourself out after you've recorded, communications and message. The last section, which is writing section in any English language test, is actually designed to measure your ability in writing English in an academic setting. So, like it happens inside a classroom, that when you listen to lectures, you're actually writing and taking notes, while you're listening to the lectures. So it's not just one skill of English which is being used. You're listening to lectures and you're writing and taking notes as well. So these integrated kind of questions are actually replicated in a TOEFL IBT test as well. So test takers, what they need to do is they are expected to simply present their ideas in a clear and a well-organized format. So yet again, having that note-taking ability is good to build upon what you want to write out in great amount of detail. But yet again, few aspects in the TOEFL test that stand out is students are not penalized for missing punctuation marks, in writing assessment, for an English language test, as long as, the assessor, or this rater of a TOEFL test is able to understand the content and the gist of what the candidate wants to write. That is good enough for us. So it really need not worry. And you need to, stick with one kind of English which is being used, be it a UK English or be it a US English. You need to stick to that particular style of writing. You cannot keep switching yet and again between too many as well. But yet again, if you do that, you're not penalized for it. These advantages really stand out where a student will be, able to score better with a TOEFL IBT test.
Makes sense. And you have very well said, actually, all the tests, all the sections are intertwined with whatever the final goal you have to achieve overseas. If you're there to study, you will not be able to study if you're not able to listen and write immediately on the basis. Your notes are going to miss, and of course, ultimately not be able to score good marks. So Netflix is there, and he mentioned very nicely, so that Netflix, you can just listen to it without reading, without subtitles, and there are very good series online, so for sure. Now you have mentioned how to prepare in a very light manner, like on a regular basis. How can you enhance your English skills, right? If I want to understand as a student who's dedicatedly planning for studying and all that, what is an ideal timeline for the preparation? And adding to that question, what kind of schedule or suggestions would you like to tell them to incorporate in their daily schedule?
Absolutely. You were just talking to me in the morning about how one student, was writing to you just 2 days before a test and he wants to prepare now and do well. So how do you do when that happens? Probably your mom is standing behind you with a stick saying कि कल test है अभी पढ़ो ठीक है बस हो गया TV देखना. So certainly that is not the ideal time to prepare for an English language test. We feel that a 3-month window is good enough for candidates to prepare well and to get to their desired scores with the TOEFL IBT test. And we have tons of practice materials which are available online. And we have a lot of, test taker companies and advisory companies as well who are working along with us as TOEFL market ambassadors across India who prepare students for these high-stake tests and assessments. So if you want to seek guidance from them, you can visit our website, that's TOEFLtest.in, and find out more details about this thing. And there are ample study materials, resources which are available on our website that you can make use of at no cost to you at all to prepare for these high-stake tests and assessments. No matter what English language test that you would want to attempt, we feel that the TOEFL IBT test is the only 100% academic English language test. So if you really want to improve your English language skills and abilities, prepare with the TOEFL IBT test. It'll certainly help you increase, your capability in English language skills in all the 4 sections that I've listed. I think you will feel more confident in attempting the test with more practice. And yes, practice is the key. Without a doubt, that will certainly help you to be able to get to your desired scores.
So it's not just maths, guys. You have to practice everywhere. Right. Now, you mentioned, would you like to recommend any study material like books or something? And also one more thing, the tests that you mentioned on the site, are they available for free for the students?
Yes, absolutely. So, how do you begin your test prep journey? So, you can get simply started with something like a 8-week TOEFL test prep planner that we have to organize your preparation efforts very effectively and to build up the skills that you really need to succeed in an English language test and assessment. This 8-week free TOEFL test prep planner, has in-depth review of the 4 sections in your test: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Now, it also incorporates really fun skill building activities where you can improve on each of these skill sets. You have sample questions of the TOEFL IBT in here as well. This is available free of cost on our website. You have scoring information and scoring guidelines, including the speaking and the writing section scores with regard to how raters assess candidates, so that you're able to understand on how are you given a score with the TOEFL IBT test. And you will also have some resource called the official guide to the TOEFL IBT test. Now, this is our top selling guide, which has 4 free full-length practice tests which are available. And yet again, this is available for you to purchase on Amazon, or you can buy this online as well. We have another content which is completely free of cost, which is actually available on edX.org, called the Insider's Guide to the TOEFL IBT test. Yet again, this Insider's Guide has a lot of fun interactive boards, engagement sessions, video content prepared by us at ETS, the makers of the TOEFL test, for you to learn English language tests and how to prepare for every section in your test. This also comes, as a paid certificate if you would want that. But again, it is a self-paced course. It's a 3-month course. So if you want to complete it in 3 weeks' time, you can do that. If you want to complete in 2 days, you can do that as well. But yet again, we recommend that this free course called the Insider's Guide, available on edX.org, you can use that for free preparation of your TOEFL IBT test. And you'd be able to do this very effectively. We have something called the TOEFL Go app as well, which you can download on App Store or on Google Play to practice for individual sections in the test at no cost. This is yet again another tool for quick practice with the kind of questions that you can expect on testing.
Right. So there are free material available on the site you can check out. And 3 months is an ideal time to start your preparation for, correct?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Correct. You have already mentioned one thing, that there is no negative marking. So it's good. But apart from that, how is the scoring pattern for the exam?
See, with regard to the scores in any English language test, the TOEFL IBT test scores do not have any passing or failing score, which is actually set by the TOEFL program or ETS. Now, each institution around the world sets their own minimum requirement for what is needed in an English language test for a student to come study at that university. So my advice would be to ask students to look at individual institutions that they are applying to. Every institution around the world accepts the TOEFL IBT test, and they will have their minimum scores listed. There is a minimum overall score that is listed, and in certain universities or institutions, they have section-wide minimum scores, which they require as well. So you need to check out what are your minimum requirements and then prepare accordingly so that you can get to those scores. Now, the TOEFL IBT scores, are from a range of 0 to 120. And every section has a score range of 0 to 30. So 30 for reading, 30 for listening, 30 for speaking, and 30 for writing. So in total, it adds up to 120. If I were to look at it as a comparison, a 6 band in an IELTS test is anywhere between a 60 to a 78 in a TOEFL IBT test. So what do you think is more easier, getting a 60 out of 120, which is half of that overall score, or getting a 6 band out of 9? So that is a call that, I would leave it up to the students to take, so that they are able to make that determined choice for themselves, which test that they would want to choose. As I mentioned, there is no negative marking in a TOEFL IBT test. You should attempt every question in the test, because it is trying to measure your skills and ability to understand. That is all that we are looking at. And with ample practice, with individual sections in the test, I feel you will be able to do very well, in English language tests as compared to the others.
Right, as we said in the starting, that we're not going to tell you exactly which test to take. It's up to you. It's your choice, and of course, the institute that you're going for. So that's there. We're almost near our time. I have two more questions to be asked. The number one question is, what is the maximum number of times that one can take any English test?
Sure. Let me answer that question. See, I've been in the tests and the assessments domain for a very long time, Shafali, and I've certainly seen boys, say from states like Punjab, reappearing for an IELTS even after they've graduated, got married, their wives have gone settled in Canada, cleared English language test themselves. And this boy, who grew up to be a man, is still appearing for an English language test. And that should never be the case, for any English language tests and assessment. There is no number of times, to limit a test taker to attempt or re-attempt English language tests. But what happens is that there is yet another very attractive feature with the TOEFL IBT test that helps reduce the number of times a student needs to retake a test. We have something called the My Best scores. Now, the My Best scores, is a combination of the highest section scores from all valid administrations of the TOEFL IBT test in a 2-year period. So it is the combination of the top scores that a student gets for reading, listening, speaking, and writing section, and the sum of all those top scores. So if a candidate, in the first attempt of a TOEFL IBT test or an English language test, gets the desired scores in 2 sections of the test, say speaking and writing, but has not been able to get their desired scores in 2 other sections of the test, the next time when he prepares for the test or assessments, all that he needs to do is concentrate on improving his skills where he's not got those desired scores. So with that, we actually combine the best scores with those multiple attempts and put it under a column called My Best Scores. And this is available in every test score report that we send out to an institution, so that institutions are able to recognize that this candidate has actually made an effort to improve his English language skills and abilities in areas where he's not been able to attempt it for the first time. I would not recommend anyone, to take English language tests and assessments for more than 2 or 3 times. It's certainly, waste of money for them to do so. They might as well invest that, elsewhere, probably get, good living accommodations with university living to begin with. So they should not be attempting English language tests multiple times. They need to improve their skills and abilities to take up a test and assessment. And I feel fundamentally that is our mission and objective, that students learn English as they prepare for our tests.
Right. And one last question, which I think everybody keeps on asking us. TOEFL is easier than IELTS.
Okay. I would never say that. See, every test, has their own advantages and disadvantages with regard to what is more comfortable for a student. And that is all that students should be looking at the end of the day. If you prepare for any English language test, you need to ensure that you understand the types of questions that they ask. And that, should be the first basic criteria, where you'd be able to do well in any English language test. If I were to just take up one example, with our latest TOEFL paper edition tests, we have seen that, many students across India, from their schooling days, have actually been giving tests on pen and paper. That's what they are as a mode most comfortable with. And that's the reason why we actually introduced the TOEFL paper edition test. A test such as this incorporates a 10-minute break, even during the first session of the test. That's between the reading, listening, and just before the writing section, there is a 10-minute break so that the student can get a mental reset before taking the all important writing section. And I feel that is so important. Yet again, we don't provide candidates, with the stress of going to the test center multiple times, even if it is conducted in 2 sessions. So in the paper edition test, the first 3 sections are conducted on one day. The speaking section is conducted on a different day, but they can take the speaking section from home. So they are not called to a test center yet again to take up the speaking section. They can take it from the safety of their homes, like they do it for a TOEFL IBT home edition test. We want to provide more convenience to test takers. Students can register for these tests if they have deadlines to meet. You can register up to 2 days before the actual test date for maximum flexibility. And you can actually select your test date and appointment with the home edition 24 hours a day, 4 days a week, anytime that is convenient for you. And so whatever works best for you, you can choose that. And same goes, with the speaking section of the paper edition test. Choose any time, that you're most comfortable with. When I took up the test, I chose to take it very early in the morning. That's the time when there are no dogs barking on the street. There's no one ringing your doorbell. And that is the most convenient time and setting for me, where I'm able to concentrate more. And I have good internet bandwidth as well. So, that is what I would do, to take up tests such as these. So tests, which actually offer you more convenience, more flexibility, those are the tests that you should do. And with every test comes ample practice. So if you practice, if you're acquainted with the kind of questions you expect on test day, you will feel very confident to do well in any English language test.
Right, great. So now I understand why it is said that TOEFL is a little easier than IELTS, because it's at your convenience. Now, as you mentioned that you can go and register before 2 days of the deadline as well. Now I get where that question was coming from, that I have 2 days for the exam left, how to prepare for it. So great, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed this session and the session was insightful. Siddharth, if you have any golden words for the students who are going to appear for this new academic year.
I wish them all the very best. And yet again, to actually fulfill your study abroad dreams and aspirations, do keep in mind, that the English language test scores and assessments, are just one key component of it. There are several other factors, which need to fall in place for you to be able to choose that destination of your choice. You need to certainly have good accommodation living. You need to ensure that you're getting into your right course, right choice of university. You need to be able to present yourself more effectively with your statement of purpose, with your letters of recommendation. All these factors do matter as well. Yet again, for you to be able to be successful in an academic environment, I feel, that the TOEFL IBT test stands far apart, where you will be able to differentiate yourselves from the others.
Great. Thank you, Siddharth. And as Siddharth mentioned, it's not just one exam. There are multiple factors when you you're planning to go study abroad. And we have covered that in our previous sessions of ULTV. Go ahead, links are below and you can check us out. We'll be coming with another insightful session, maybe about next entrance exam in next Friday. Keep tuned us in. And thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Siddharth, for joining us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good day to everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.